Hello everyone and welcome back to another Trade Machine video on the channel. Today we're going to be doing a Trade Machine video for John Collins, as you guys can see. And John Collins is an interesting one. Since this off-season, John Collins is someone I've expected to be on the trade market, and I'm surprised it took us until about the last week or so for the rumors to kick up that Atlanta were willing to trade him and are open to some offers. As soon as the Danilo Gallinari signing was made, and I'm fairly certain that if you look back at my Atlanta Hawks season preview video, I would have made note of this. Or if I didn't, then that's on me. It was in my mind nonetheless. The point being is that Danilo Gallinari being signed and John Collins being on the roster didn't really make sense to me because they just signed Danilo Gallinari to a 3-year deal worth $20 million a year, and then essentially said he was going to come off the bench. And now I would assume that Gallinari was aware of this in signing the contract, but it seemed weird to give a 3-year. Was it $20 million a year? I'm mistaking myself now. It might have even been more than that. Yeah, it was $20 million a year. 3 years, $20 million a year. It's the highest salary number ever given to someone over the age of 30 who's never been an All-Star, and he's coming off the bench. He's getting paid till he's the age of 35. It was a weird deal to me for him to come off the bench. John Collins then didn't get his extension later on in the summer, which makes him a restricted free agent at the end of the season. And it just made it feel even more likely to me that it is possible that he would get traded, because Danilo Gallinari coming off the bench seemed weird. It didn't seem right for me to him to be playing at the 3 because he doesn't have enough ability for that anymore. And a few days later, after he got signed, that he wasn't going to be starting at the 3 and he was indeed going to be coming off the bench. And obviously DeAndre Hunter, before his injury, was the man soaking up those minutes, and he has been very good at that small forward position this season. He's much improved his offensive game. He already had a good defensive game with his left-arm athleticism. But it kind of leaves a weird spot for John Collins here, because with Gallinari around for at least the next 2 seasons, unless he gets dealt, they have DeAndre Hunter on the roster, Cam Reddish on the roster, Bogdan Bogdanovic, none of which are really power forwards. But with Gallinari being able to play that role, you could see DeAndre Hunter moving down to play a small ball 4 if wanted. And John Collins hasn't had as good of a season as you would have hoped this year. Last year was 21.6 points per game, while getting 10 total rebounds and 1.6 blocks. His defense still hasn't improved to the level you would like it. He is definitely more of an offensive producer, and his position is still a bit of a tweener, right? He's always been a bit of a tweener between a power forward and a center, similar to Marvin Bagley. His offensive role suits very well as a power forward. He can shoot the 3. He is big for that position, to be able to get in some post-ups and dominate in that way. But at the center position, he is a little bit undersized and definitely struggles defensively. And given he isn't great defensively, that definitely helps him having Capella behind him in Atlanta. However, Collins doesn't also have amazing mobility to be able to guard elite 4s in this league that do have very good mobility. And so he is a bit of a weird positional matchup in that sense. At the power forward position, I feel like he is probably best, because size-wise, offensively, he struggles at the center position, and defensively, he just isn't good enough on defense. Whereas on offense, his size is good enough, and his ability on the perimeter is good enough with his 3-point shot that the power forward position is the spot for him. And because of that, unless we see a transition to him to center and a trade of Capella, I think John Collins is kind of the odd man out here. And that's not to say that they won't re-sign him, or might be a sign and trade. But with his production down a little bit this year compared to last year, the improved play of DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish has had a better year or 2 as well, and Trae Young's constant progression, the addition of Bogdan Bogdanovic. This team has a lot of good pieces, a lot of people who they got to pay. Danilo Gallinari's got $20 million for another 2 years. Bogdan Bogdanovic is on a 4-year deal worth $18 million a year. Capella still has 3 years left at $16 million. Tony Snell isn't expiring. Rajon Rondo's getting $7.5 million for the next 2 years. DeAndre Hunter at $7.4 for the next 3. And then after that, he's going to get paid. Trae Young's only got 2 more seasons at $6.5 million, and then he's going to get paid as well. Cam Reddish is going to have to get paid in 3 years. Herter's going to have to get paid in 2 years. They got a lot of young talent that is going to get their bag within the next 2 to 3 seasons. And they're not going to be able to pay everyone because John Collins is going to be looking for anywhere from 18 to 20 million. You go and look at DeAndre Hunter. The way he's playing, he's going to be demanding over 20 million. Trae Young is going to be demanding a max. And Cam Reddish is going to be demanding anywhere over 10 million. Kevin Herter probably in that same range of 12 to 15 at the way they currently play. Who knows how that'll change as the years progress. Those values could very much change, but just based on even current ability and current progression, that is the ballpark, and that could go higher. It's probably not going to go lower. That's with already paying Gallinari money, Bogdan money, Clint Capella money, Rondo money. This team needs to figure out who they want to keep and build around for the next 5 to 10 years and who they don't. And I think this Atlanta Hawks team kind of decided with that Danilo Gallinari signing in the summer that John Collins wasn't going to be one of those guys. And so, with that being said, he is now expiring, however, an RFA. So there should be some value that they can get back for him. Whether that means they want some draft compensation, whether it means they try and acquire some young assets that they don't have to pay for a little bit yet, and then they try and flip them as well. Try and take a flyer on someone and get some draft assets. It'll be something along those lines, I would imagine. Because John Collins is still going to demand a fair bit of value because it is an expiring, but not a UFA, is an RFA. The odds of being able to retain him are much higher. And for that reason, I think the value for him is going to be quite significant across the league. It's a powerful position, not anything crazy, but definitely significant enough to get Atlanta a decent return. With that being said, let's go look at a few possible trade scenarios for John Collins. Here we are back again on NBA Trade Machine, and the first trade we are going to be going with today is going to be with the Memphis Grizzlies. This would be a type of trade where Memphis have a lot of quality role players on this team, but they don't really have anyone else at that next level other than John Morant and potentially Jaren Jackson Jr. We'll see once we get back healthy. And if he starts seeing some minutes at the center position, you could see John Collins come here, or John Collins plays at the center, Jaren Jackson Jr. Power forward. But either way, now that Jaren Jackson Jr. is now 7 feet, I wouldn't be surprised to see him make an evolution to the center position. And this team could then want some more spacing and a more proven player alongside those two to start building into a more consistent playoff team as John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. continue to develop. With that being said, if this trade were to happen and John Collins were to go to Memphis, I would expect that in a separate trade, you would see Jonas Valanciunas get dealt. But considering next year he is going to be in an expiring contract, he doesn't necessarily fit the timeline of this team. And now that Jaren Jones Jr. has increased in size and could potentially play that center position, I think that could be very valuable. Defensively, we could see some questions about Jaren Jackson Jr., but I think he could develop to that. He has the length, he has the size, he has the strength, and I think his ability to shoot and dribble and penetrate at the center position could be extremely valuable for this team. And so, in a later Trade Machine video, we will be doing a Trade Machine video for Jonas Valanciunas because I think that JV trade is very possible, given that he will be expiring at the end of the season, and I think Georgie Dang is also possible that he gets dealt to match some salary somewhere as well. If someone wants to take on some expirings. With that being said, in this trade itself, I think we would see John Collins go to the Memphis Grizzlies. We would see Brandon Clark, our beloved Canadian, go to the Atlanta Hawks, and we would also see a first-round pick go back to the Atlanta Hawks, whether that's a 2021 or 2021, 2022. That's not overly relevant in this scenario. That would be a direct replacement for John Collins for the time being for the Atlanta Hawks. And as much as it seems weird that a direct replacement to power forward position is what ends up happening here, I think the reason that Atlanta could be interested in this is because A, they get another first round pick back, which could very well be a pick in the lottery, depending on which year they get it in and how Memphis perform. And Brandon Clark doesn't have to get paid for another 3 years. So will Brandon Clark be paid by the Atlanta Hawks? Probably not. But it does give them another 2 to 3 years of Brandon Clark, a young, good scoring power forward. And that's what John Collins is. Now, does John Collins score the ball better than Brandon Clark does? Yes. There's no doubt about it. But Atlanta get 2 more years out of Brandon Clarke before they have to worry about paying him than they do with John Collins, while also getting an asset back. I think this is a win-win for both teams. Memphis can get themselves another bit more proven offensive player to throw alongside John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. This would then allow them to be able to get some assets back for Jonas Valanciunas, and just put themselves in a good position to having John Collins, John Morant, and Jaren Jackson Jr. for their future. That's not an elite core, but it's definitely a playoff core if you can surround them with the right pieces. Especially within a couple of years, if you can start to get a bit of this money out of the way. Georgia Dang's expiring is going to be gone. JV at $15 million a year is quite likely to get dealt for a walk-in free agency. Justice Winslow, hasn't even played really yet, has he? He can't stay healthy and produce. He'll be gone as well. So if we can get that type of money freed up, there'd be $45 million in cash space freed up for the Grizzlies. That'd be enough to pay John Collins and more. Obviously, Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant will have to get some money as well. But I feel like it would put Memphis in a good spot moving forward, and it would put Atlanta in a good spot in terms of their cap structure for the next couple of seasons. Moving along to another team that I think could potentially make this trade. It's a team that has been willing to make some trades for some key players in the past. D'Angelo Russell coming in. We saw them make the trade. Make quite a few interesting trades in the last couple of years. Malik Beasley coming over there as well, being another one of them. And I think it is quite possible that we could see John Collins come over to the Minnesota Timberwolves. What we would see in return would be what I believe is unfortunately still a bit of a castaway as far as his PT so far in Minnesota and Jarrett Culver. I still think this guy has a lot of talent. I think he's improved a bit on the defensive end this season as well. Just his overall production on the offensive end has definitely been better than last season. He just hasn't gotten consistent PT yet last year or this year. He's been given up on really quick. Rumors were coming out of Minnesota last year that they realized pretty early on that they thought he was bust. But they gave him like 40 games to determine if he was bust. There'd be a lot of players that are really good right now that would be so-called busts if we didn't judge them off their first 40 games. There's some players that don't get good until year 4 or 5. And here we are now saying Jarrett Culver is a bust after 40 games, according to some people within the Minnesota organization. Because of that, I think it is quite possible that he goes back to Atlanta along with a first-round pick, which will most likely be a high pick, but I think it's probably what Minnesota would have to give up for John Collins. I don't like this trade as much as the Memphis trade. I think the Memphis trade is a bit more likely, and I think the pick compensation is a little bit more fair because I think Minnesota's pick is much more likely to be a high lottery pick, whereas Memphis' pick will probably be a bit lower, and that's why I wouldn't be surprised if you see a protection on this. Whether that's top 8, top 10 lottery, you can definitely see a protection on that pick for sure. Jarrett Culver's fit within Atlanta definitely doesn't put him in the starting lineup, given you have Trae Young, you have Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter. You would then now most likely have a DeAndre Hunter at the 4 scenario here. I think you could see him move to the 4, and so you would probably see a starting lineup of Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, and Clint Capella, in which case you would probably have Jarrett Culver off the bench along with Danilo Gallinari. Or you could also see Danilo Gallinari start at the 4 and have Bogdan Bogdanovic and Jarrett Culver come off the bench, or Cam Reddish and Jarrett Culver come off the bench. Either way, there would be really, really good wing depth. Whether you want to consider Jarrett Culver a winger or guard, I suppose it's up to you. But in that 2-3 position, there would be really good depth on this Atlanta Hawk team. And they could potentially see if Jarrett Culver can improve a bit more to the potential that we would like, and also get a first-round pick out of it as well in return for John Collins. The third and final trade I want to talk about today, on a team that is having one of their better seasons since Kemba Walker left, and might want to add some pieces around this improving team and around Gordon Hayward and around Terry Rozier and LaMelo Ball as they all develop. This one, I'll also see John Collins, of course, go to Charlotte. This one is a bit more questionable. The first trade is definitely my favorite trade. This one would probably have to see John Collins play at the center position because I don't think P.J. Washington is going to come off the bench. I think they really like P.J. Washington. I really like P.J. Washington. I think he has a lot to offer on the basketball court, and he knows how to score the ball. He's a good spacer, and he's very valuable for this team. So with that being said, this team doesn't have a great center. The center is Cody Zeller. He's definitely one of the worst starting centers in the league. However, he's also getting paid $15 million a season, which is a bit odd. That being said, he isn't expiring, so he definitely, I would imagine, will not be back on the team. Will be paid a much lesser salary, likely back Biombo on a short-term deal. But that being said, this would give this Charlotte team a very, very solid starting lineup, and definitely a starting lineup that could see themselves into the playoffs this season. LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington, John Collins. They would still have Devontae Graham on the team. Cody Zeller would still be off the bench. Malik Monk, Miles Bridges, Matt Biombo. There'll be some quality pieces on this team. I think adding the scoring punch of John Collins at the center position would be very useful for them. I think their defense would definitely suffer. There is no doubt about that. But I think from an offensive standpoint, it would definitely give them another elite scorer alongside Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward, and another guy to play make with LaMelo Ball, a good pick and roll, pick and pop guy with LaMelo Ball as well, which I think could be very valuable because this team doesn't really have that. They get a bit of pick and pop with PJ Washington, but nothing great. And so I think that addition with John Collins could be very, very useful. As far as what would be going back to the Atlanta Hawks, well, some of that depth, of course, is going to have to go, right? And I think Malik Monk and Miles Bridges could very well be part of that. And then along with that, I don't think you'd have to give up a first-round pick here. You'd probably see a second or two into Atlanta as well because of that. Or you could potentially see one of Malik Monk or Miles Bridges stay with Atlanta and that second come back. One of Miles Bridges or Malik Monk stay with Charlotte. A second-round pick stay with Charlotte as well, and then a first-round pick gets dealt if Charlotte thinks that first-round pick isn't as much value to them if they're going to be in the playoffs, and they'd rather hold on to guys like Miles Bridges and Malik Monk. Malik Monk has had a few really good performances this season, but he hasn't done enough consistent PT or enough consistent performances to show that that's going to be a consistent thing we can count on from him. Miles Bridges is still a quality role player in this league, there's no doubt about that, and is still improving. Malik Monk does have to get paid at the end of the season, and so it is going to be interesting to see how much he does get paid, whether that is by the team that has his rights or he gets an offer sheet in the summer. There's going to be some teams with some money this summer after what was supposed to be an exciting free agency class this summer that is now very much dried up very quick, with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry supposedly being a couple of the best players on the market. And I love DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. I'm a Toronto Raptors fan, and they're some of my two favorite players of all time. But when those guys are among the top of your free agency class, it's just not that exciting of a summer compared to previous ones, right? Especially for teams that are sitting on multiple max slots of salary cap. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Malik Monk. But again, this would add very, very good wing and guard depth for the Atlanta Hawks. That could be very crucial for them moving forward as they continue to push to try and make the jump into the playoffs. With that being said, those are my thoughts on a few potential John Collins trades. I still think that Memphis trade with Brandon Clark and a first-round pick for John Collins is the best trade here and the most likely scenario, as Memphis try to make a consistent push to be a playoff team and try and add a bit more offensive punch to a team of very good, hard-working, high-energy, high-hustle defensive players that have made a name for themselves in Memphis. I think a bit more offensive punch on that team could be very valuable to have alongside JJJ and Ja Morant. That being said, hope you guys did enjoy the video. Thank you guys for watching. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. Follow my other socials below if you are new. And I will see you guys in the next one.